Hey y'all, this is Tony Paradis. I'm a licensed dietitian and personal trainer with Food and Fitness. Thank you for coming to my presentation on growing an organic garden at home. There are many reasons why you may want to grow your own organic garden at home. One being that, of course, you like to eat organic foods. Some other great reasons are it's a great way if you have children to kind of get them involved in the healthy eating process, and normally when they grow something, they'll usually want to eat it, and it kind of gets them to understand where healthy food can come from. It's also a great way to get different kinds of foods that may not be available in the grocery store. And then finally, it's just a fun hobby, it's a challenge, and it's something that you can take a lot of pride in if you end up doing one successfully. So we'll be going over today planning on how to figure out what kind of garden you want, getting started with those beginning steps, the seed, planting the seeds, getting the pots and the dirt ready, maintenance and care, and finally harvesting, and I'll answer any questions at the end. So when it comes to planting, there are a few things that you may want to consider about the space and time commitment. So a big reason why most people don't plan like a really big garden is you do have to take care of it. So you need to figure out how much space you have. So if you're growing plants in a apartment, you'll have your windowsill available. You may have a balcony available, and if you have a bigger backyard, that may also help you out as well to plant more foods and have more space. Time commitment, how much time do you want to spend watering, weeding, in the preparation process. Basically, a garden should not be too labor intensive if it's just a kind of a hobby garden, but you can make this as difficult or as easy as you want. So do you want to do outside in containers, outside in garden in rows, or a combination? I generally feel like containers are the easiest way to do it because they're not going to get as many weeds. They tend to hold moisture better. And then the more you kind of get into, planting rows and raised beds and things like that, the more time involvement you're going to be looking at. So when it comes to plant choices, let's say, in this example, I want to do mostly pots and a windowsill garden. Now I got to figure out what do I want to eat. You need to choose things that are versatile and that your family likes to eat. So, one thing you may want to do is eggplant, but if the only recipe you know how to make is eggplant parmesan, you're not going to want to do tons and tons of eggplant. Maybe choose something for your first time gardening to make a majority of the plants that you're doing, things like onions, things like tomatoes, peppers, things that go with a lot of other things and that you really like and that you're going to eat up. Now, that's not to say not to experiment with something like eggplant or a different type of vegetable that you don't normally cook with, but the majority of your garden should be things that you like to eat and that are versatile. Do you want to go with a theme? We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Easy to grow and maintain, and what's the best producing. So obviously you don't want to plant a maple tree from a seed unless you plan on waiting 100 years for that to grow so you can tap in and get some maple syrup. Choose things that are going to be easy and that produce quickly and abundantly. Some of the easiest things to grow if you guys are new at gardening, number one are cherry tomatoes or the cherub tomatoes, the little small tomato variety. Really any type of tomato is easy to grow. Green onions are really easy because they take up such little room that you can really just plant those in between any variety of other plants that you may want to plant in your garden. Hot peppers are great. A lot of my clients are here. I'm from Texas. So if you guys want to do hot peppers, they usually flourish in the direct sunlight and the hot heat here. Herbs are very, very easy to do. I really recommend getting some sort of herbs, basil, parsley, oregano, those sorts of things, because they're easy. They can grow on a balcony, in a windowsill, in your backyard, and it just adds having those fresh herbs available throughout the summer can add a lot of flavor to what you're doing. Squash is really easy to grow. It's very aggressive. I wouldn't grow this in squash or cucumber unless you have a lot of room. And then lettuce is pretty easy to grow as well if you want to try that. So let's talk about some themes that you could do. You can kind of choose, okay, do I want to make all the plants kind of geared toward one theme? You know, one example you could do is a salsa garden. And I think that's what I'm going to do this year. Plant tomatoes, peppers, onions, cilantro. All those go good with salsa, kind of a Mexican food theme. That would be a good thing to do. You could do an Italian garden. You could do tomatoes, onions, garlic, and Italian herbs like basil, oregano, parsley. But you could do a salad garden, you know, make things that you want to have fresh salads during the summer. So you could do your leafy greens, plant your different lettuces, and then maybe have a cucumber, tomato, onion, or whatever, peppers, whatever you really like in your salads. You could do kind of a country theme. I thought of this one this morning. You could do okra, green bean, squash, things like that that go good, you know, with a nice chicken fried steak or whatever you want to do for your country food. And then an herb garden. I would go with this if, you know, this is the first time that you're gardening and you want to keep something very small. Maybe just do something you can keep on your balcony and just do your favorite herbs. Okay, so when preparing to plant, you need to decide on the plants you want before buying the containers. Obviously, because different plants are going to have different needs, you can't grow a squash plant in a small gardening pot. You'll have to use either a big container or in the ground. So you can do containers like pots or like big rubber containers. I've used like those big storage Rubbermaid containers before. Those worked out great, raised beds or the ground. When you choose your soil, if you want to do a potting soil, look for that organic label on there. Obviously, if we're planting an organic garden, we want to start with really good soil. And you can also use dirt from your backyard, and you can even do a combination of mixing some potting soil with some dirt, and that will work just great. Some container ideas are recycled materials. You can use old big coffee cans if you want. You can use different buckets and things like that. Maybe even paint over them if you want to get creative. You can use, like I said, those rubber storage containers. You can build something out of wood. Whatever you make, if it's a closed container, be sure to allow for drainage. You don't want the water to build up on the bottom and create mold and mildew and things that are going to hurt your plant and maybe even make you sick. Okay, so we have an idea of what kind of plants we wanted to use. Maybe we want to do a salsa garden. We have an idea of the containers we're going to use, maybe a combination of planting in the ground and using gardening pots. Now we have to find our seeds and sprout our seeds. So find your seeds or plants at a local nursery. You know, you may want to look for the organic label, or you may want to even. What I've done in the past is, let's say you're eating a vegetable, like I bought some organic peppers the other day. I just, when I opened it up, it already had seeds inside of it, and I just scraped out those seeds and put them in a jar, and then now they're ready to plant. So you can even save some money and do something like that. Okay, so there are different methods for sprouting. One is the Ziploc bag and paper towel method. If you've never heard of that, Google it for more detailed instructions. But basically, you moisten a paper towel, stick it in a Ziploc bag and some seeds on the outside, and put that in the light, and then you'll see the seeds start to sprout. You can pluck them out and plant them later. The egg and crate method, which I have illustrated here. You can plant some seeds in an old egg container, and they'll grow down, and you'll have little bitty planters where you can pull them out and then transplant them if you want to later. And then also, if you don't want to do something like this where you plant them in a small container and then transfer them, you can just plant a bunch of seeds in the container that you want to use, and then when they start sprouting, just start thinning them out. In other words, pulling out the plants in areas that you don't want to allow adequate room. And then you can just do everything in one container. You can also buy a young plant if you have either waited too long in the season, or if you want to you just don't want to go through the sprouting the seed process. You can get like a small tomato or basil or whatever kind of plant you want. Okay, when planting, allow enough room for the plants to grow. This can be, you can find this out by either researching the plant. If you buy seeds, it's usually on the back of the seed bag, it'll say, or the seed envelope rather. Or if you're buying it from a nursery, you can get instructions from one of the people that work there to give you an idea of how much room you need to put for the plants. Usually with herbs, you're gonna want about a foot, 8 inches to 14 inches for herbs. With bigger plants, it's going to vary greatly, so just look into each of those. Also consider plants that complement each other. So there's an old legend called the Three Sisters, Native American legend. And so the idea is, or the gist is, that you have corn to grow tall, then you plant a bean vine under it that will grow up and travel around the corn, and then squash, which stays low to the ground. So you can plant these three things next to each other, and they actually complement each other. They synergize. Other things you can do, like an easy one, is plant green onions around anything that you grow, because it grows up like grass, and kind of just fill in some gaps. And basically doing things like this can really maximize the space that you have and get you the most bang for your buck. Okay, so now you've grown your garden. And you want to maintain it, of course. Water in the evening or early morning to conserve water, especially during the summer months. You don't want to water during the middle of the day, because a lot of that's going to get evaporated from the direct sunlight. If the soil is already moist, there's no need to water. You can stick your finger in it and check for the appropriate level of dampness. Later, you can also add mulch to protect the plant and conserve water. I don't recommend doing this until your plant's grown up a little bit, obviously, because pouring a bag of mulch might crush a very young plant. And then, of course, if weeds are growing in your garden, you'll need to pull them. If your plants get sick, you need to ask yourself, the first three biggest things is there enough sunlight? You want to plant your garden so that it gets the appropriate amount of sunlight. Depending on what plant that you have, usually most fruiting and vegetable plants are going to need direct sunlight, but it really depends. So you got to say, okay, is it getting enough sunlight? Am I watering it enough and regularly? And is it getting enough nutrients? Maybe the pot that you've chosen is too small and it's used up all the nutrients. You may need to add some nutrients later. You can find like an organic fertilizer to add to your garden. And then finally, if it's none of those three things, you may want to check the pH, because certain plants have a optimal pH that they grow in, and you'll want to look at that kind of as a final thing. And then beyond that, your plant may have some sort of blight, some sort of true sickness, and that's really not an area of my expertise. That'd really be something to ask the people at your local gardening supply shop or your local nursery. Okay, so when it comes to harvesting, you want to harvest regularly to reduce waste. There will be some plants that just grow so aggressively, like a tomato plant. You may have to pick new tomatoes every day. You can store in the refrigerator, or you can use them immediately. For example, if you have an herb garden, what I like to do is I like to just clip my herbs and then wash them right before I cook with them to really add a fresh flavor there. And then you can use different preserving techniques. I recommend using some of these techniques so you don't have waste. One of them can be canning. If you guys have a pressure cooker and you know how to can food, that's a great way to do it, especially with acidic things like tomatoes. You can dehydrate some foods if you have a food dehydrator, but I know that everybody has a freezer, so that can be an easy way to do it. And when you freeze something, you may not want to use it later fresh. I'm going to use tomatoes, for example. But you can certainly use those tomatoes later to make like a soup or a stew or like a tomato sauce, which if you've never made your own homemade organic tomato sauce, you're really missing out because it is way different than the stuff that you buy at the store. Okay, so some final thoughts is don't be a perfectionist. Sometimes we don't want to get started because we don't have, everything we really need. We want to plan it out and be perfect and check the pH of the soil and get the perfect potting soil and all that. What I encourage you to do is if you have some space or you have a couple pots or some room on your balcony, is just throw some seeds in some dirt and water it and see what happens. If it grows, it grows. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But don't not get started or get started late in the summer when it's too late to grow from the seed because you keep procrastinating. Just get something started. Even if you're cutting up a pepper or something, just grab some of the seeds and throw them in your backyard and see what happens. If it grows, then you'll have a great plant fruiting for you all summer long. You'll be glad you didn't. So don't be a perfectionist, just get it started. It's okay to experiment. This is something that you're not going to get perfect on the first time, and play around with it. Try different things, try different containers, try different additives, watering techniques, different levels of sunlight, and then make some notes for next year. All right, guys, so unless there's any questions or concerns, I'm going to go ahead and end the presentation. But basically, to kind of recap, is plan ahead before you get started. Figure out what kind of plants you're going to want to eat and maintain your garden, and then either use them immediately or use some sort of storage, either freezing them or refrigerating them to make sure that there's no food waste. I'm Tony Paradis, licensed dietitian and personal trainer with Food and Fitness, and thanks for checking out my presentation on planting an organic garden at home. Thank you.